Okay, welcome to Math 31, Section 5.2. We're learning how to add and subtract decimal numbers. The main idea here is to line up the decimal points, and once you've done that, you treat this as a regular addition problem. So your decimal has to line up all the way through the problem. 8 and 3 is 11, so we carry the 1 there. 1, 4, and 5 adds up to 10, and that problem is finished. Okay, in this case, we've got three numbers we're adding, so 9.35, and then 6.1, and 18.256. And what I suggest on these problems where you have a different number of decimal points is that you pad with zeros so that you can see where everything lines up here. So your decimal lines up in the answer along with the other decimals. 0 plus 0 plus 6. 5, 5, and 0 is 10. You carry the 1. In this case, you get 7 with no carry. I like to put a 0 in there. So now you're adding 9 and 6 would be 15. 15 and 8 is 23. So you carry the 2, and you get 33.706. Okay, in this next example, you're supposed to estimate the answer and do the exact answer. And the idea is the estimate will give you an idea. You'll be able to tell if it's a reasonable answer. Now, I already have these decimals lined up, so I'm going to do the actual calculation first. 4 and 9 is 13. The next column adds up to 5 with no carry. I like to put a 0. It keeps track of where I'm at. This next column, 0, 8, and 2 adds up to 10. And when you add this next column, 1, 5, and 7, you get 13. So we carry a 1, and you get 430.53. Now, to estimate, and that's the second half of this, we're just seeing if it's a reasonable answer. 358.14 is close to 360. And this next column here, if we're rounding to the nearest 10, is 70. 72.39 is closer to 70 than it is 80. So you get, let's see, 3 there, 430, and our answer is very close to 430. So this estimate tells us our answer is reasonable. Okay, our first number here, 18, doesn't have a decimal point, and so the default place for that decimal is behind it. So we're subtracting 5.2 from 18. We'll put a 0 there, and line up the decimals just like you do when you're adding. In this case, we're going to borrow and make that a 7 and borrow there. 10 take away 2 is 8. And then 7 take away 5 is 2, and 1 take away nothing, 12.8. Okay, this one here, the borrowing gets a little tricky, but otherwise it's similar to the last problem, the decimals at the end. So we're going to subtract 238.3, and I'm going to go ahead and put a 0 in here so that I can see all the columns. Subtracting 3 taken away from 0 is not going to happen. So I have to take this whole thing as if it were 6,000 and make it 5,999. And now I can bring that extra 1 that I took away over to the column, and you get 7 behind the decimal point. Now the rest is 9 minus 8, 9 minus 3, 9 minus 2, and finally the 5. So your answer is 5,761.7. Okay, this one here, the language of the problem tells us that we're going to start with 12.15, and from that we're going to subtract 6.4. We'll put a 0 in there to make it more obvious what that column has in it. 5 take away 0, 1 take away 4, we'll have to borrow. And 11 take away 4 gives 7. Our decimals line up in the answer as well as the original problem. And finally, 11 take away 6 is 5. Okay, on this one here, we're starting to get a little more fancy. We're going to change this subtraction to adding the opposite, and now we're adding two negative numbers. It's like adding, but you tack the negative onto the final result. So 24.8, 4.6. This gives a 4 in the right-hand column, 14 transfers or carries the 10, and then these next column adds up to 9, so 29.4, but both of these are negative numbers, so you're going further into debt when you take negative 24.8 and you add another negative 4.6. Okay, the next problem here has a double negative, so we're going to change that, and since these are opposite signs, they cancel each other and we end up subtracting. So take your larger one, the one that's further from 0, and subtract the other one. 8 minus 3 is 5, and 6 minus 4 is 2. Now all that's left is to decide the sign of the answer. And since this number, the negative, is further from 0 than the positive is, you get a negative answer. Okay, in the next example, example I, I've chosen to give you the values of these variables up in the instructions. So when it says x plus z, I want 4.8. Let me write that a little better. 4.8 plus the z value is 0.53. I'll just arrange these with the decimals lined up. And we'll be adding these. 3, 13, so 5.33 is the final answer. Okay, similar problem. This time I want the y minus the z. So I'm going to take the 6 minus the 0.53, and I'll go ahead and put the decimal in and a couple extra zeros. Okay, subtracting 0 from 3 ain't going to happen unless you borrow, so we'll make this 5, 9 there. 10 minus 3 is 7. 9 minus 5 is 4. Your decimal lines up, and you get 5.47. Okay, we have an algebra problem here. We're supposed to combine the like terms. I'm going to, first of all, color code them. I'll do the ones that have X in them in pink, and the other ones in blue. So we put the pink ones together, and this is a case where we're taking 16.8 and we're subtracting 3.5 from it. So it's 13.3x. And now I'll do the ones that are in blue, and that's a negative 4.2 plus a 1.2. The negative's going to win in this dogfight, so I'll go ahead and put a negative in there. And the difference between 4.2 and 1.2 is 3. Now you can just write it as 3 or 3.0, either one. Probably better to just make the most simple version of it. So there you go. That's the algebra version of these problems. Okay, here's one from geometry where you're supposed to add up the side lengths. It says find the perimeter, and the perimeter is the distance all the way around the object. So we're going to add these lengths, starting with 4.85, and then the width of 3.78, another length of 4.85, that would be down here, and finally over here there's another width of 3.78. And we're adding this up to find the perimeter. Okay, we've got 5 plus 8 plus 5 plus 8. That would be 13, and 13 is 26. The next column adds up to, let's see, 2 and 8 is 10. Another 7 is 17. 17 and 8 is 25. 25 and 7 is 32. Our decimal lines up like we've been doing. And the next column, along with a carry, adds up to 17. You get, 17 is what those add up to. So there's your perimeter. It would be in inches. Okay, example M, and this will be the last one. It says shares in Delta Travel sell for $13.325 per share, less than the cost of the Alpha Destination shares. So if the cost of the Alpha Destination is $65.13, what is the Delta share price? Well, we know that this $65.13 is more than, and it quantifies it. It says how much more than. It says exactly $13.325 per share less than that price. So we'll subtract this to find out the price of the Delta shares. So 0 take away 5, we have to borrow, and that gives 5. 2 from 2 is 0. We have to borrow again. 11 take away 3 is 8. Our decimals line up. We get a 1 there and a 5 there. Okay, so the price for the Delta Travel shares are $51.805. And that does it for this